Today we are driving the 2024 Acura Integra Type S. So does this fancy Civic drive well on the road? Let's go ahead and find out. As always, let me give you a brief tour of the car before we get it out on the road. For Type S duty, we have a nice key fob with a red stripe and Type S branding on the back. The front end is really aggressive, and you get this diamond pentagon grille with an open surface finish. There is a functional vent down below that looks really cool, and you also get these LED headlights. Around the side, you'll find these shark gray finished wheels and these red Brembo brakes. There's a Type S badge and these mirrors with 2 out of the 4 safety features. There are also fender flares on all 4 corners, which look really cool on this Type S model. At the bottom, you'll find 3 exhaust tips down below, so that means we're going to listen to it from the outside. That sounds really good, aside from the plane going by at the last second. Let's open up the trunk and see how much space is back here. Because this is a liftback, you'll find 24 cubic feet, which is a lot more than a traditional sedan and the competition. Let's close that up and see what the back seat is like. This is actually more of a disappointing part of the Integra because the back seat is not all that well done. In the back, you get 37 inches of legroom, which is adequate for this size, but the headroom situation is not that great. Also, you're missing out on a lot of amenities. You don't get a center console, you only get 2 cup holders, no vents, no USB ports, no climate controls, only a map pocket on the passenger side. So basically, that space right there that's covered in plastic is going to waste. Here's a preview of the front, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. Closing up the door, you'll find a very solid sounding thunk. And opening up the front door, you'll find these red leather seats with suede inserts. This is definitely a cool touch and something that you won't find on the Civic Type R. Also, what you won't find is 12 ways of power adjusting, because that is an Acura only touch. Now inside, let's go ahead and start it up. Such modesty from that exhaust note. We do have a head-up display, a perforated leather steering wheel that feels very good in the hands. You get a wireless phone charger, 2 USB-C ports, you get a manual stick shift, and opening up the console, there isn't a ton of room, but you do get 2 cup holders, which is nice. This is currently the only Acura in production that has a touchscreen besides from the 2025 MDX. Of course, you do have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Overall, this system works really well, and you get a fully digital gauge cluster to go along with it. There is no sunroof at the top to save weight, which I'm completely fine with. With all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and take this Acura Integra Type S for a drive. Okay, we are finally driving the 2024 Acura Integra Type S. I've been waiting for this one for a long time, so we're going to be going on a longer test drive route today. Let's start with an acceleration test. Okay, that was not too bad, and that leads me into the powertrain. This shares a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine with the Honda Civic Type R, only this makes 5 more horsepower. We have 320 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. A 6-speed manual transmission is the only option, as well as front-wheel drive. Fuel economy is okay for this segment at 21 in the city, 28 on the highway, and 24 combined. So those specs and the acceleration is going to be on par with the rest of the segment. So we're talking Audi S3, BMW M235i Grand Coupe, and the Cadillac CT4V. So expect 0 to 60 in the real world in about 5.6 seconds. That's not too bad, but it's not going to be the fastest thing in the world. Now let's talk about the 6-speed manual transmission. Nothing is more fun than a manual transmission, not even paddle shifters. The only criticism that I have, and I've heard from other reviewers, the clutch is not as pronounced as I'd like it to be. I'm not driving the car right now, but I felt it when I was sitting up there and I was starting it and trying it out. So that is one thing to keep in mind. So if you are a person that hasn't driven a manual before and you're learning on this Integra, just keep that in mind. Also, that goes for people that haven't driven a manual in many years. Now let's go ahead and get onto the entrance ramp with this very slow truck in front of us and see how this accelerates in comfort mode. We're not going to be doing any hard acceleration because, again, there's an extremely slow truck in front of us, so I want to see how smooth we can get the shifts in comfort mode. In comfort mode, the active valves will close and you also will get less of a pronounced noise. So we're going to be in first gear right now and shifting up to second gear pretty soon. There we go, and that was actually not too bad. It is kind of compared to a rougher transmission on an automatic car like our 2012 Acura MDX, but not too bad for comfort mode. So we are entering the highway right now, so that's going to give us a good chance to talk about wind and tire noise. We are riding on 19-inch alloy wheels in a shark gray finish. So they're not going to make too much noise, but we still are going to give a sample anyway. So we are going to get up to highway speed, and I'll give you a tire noise sample, give you my thoughts, a wind noise sample, and then I'll give you my thoughts as well. So let's start off with the tire noise sample first. That was actually quite a loud road surface right there, and I have to say that the Integra's tires are actually pretty quiet. Now you are hearing some pretty loud road noises right now, and that is because of the wind noise. So let me give you another sample for the wind noise. So I have to say that for $53,000, I was expecting it to be a little bit quieter, but for a sports car, that's going to be okay because that's just what you expect. Now, this is going to be pretty loud. I'm not going to say that it's quiet because it definitely isn't, but all of that is going to be excused when you go into a canyon road. Obviously, we do not have a canyon road on today's test drive, but if you do go to a canyon road, you are going to have fun. For one, the steering feel is absolutely fantastic. It's quick, precise, and weighted appropriately. Also, the handling is great for a sports sedan, and that's what you would expect from an Integra Type S because this is a pretty sporty car. The brakes bite in hard, and it will slow you down if you really need to, and the front end will just stay planted as it is. So this is definitely a pleasurable and fun car to drive, and for a commuter, I think this would be an okay option. Now instead of turning around, we are actually going to go straight onto the other highway. So that's going to give us another chance to go ahead and see what the acceleration is like because if you remember from about a year ago, we really got up there in the TLX Type S. And speeding up through this yellow light, I have to say that the torque is present and it provides a pretty solid feel. Now here we are at the highway entrance. This is part 1 of the highway entrance. So you've got the instant torque right there. And we are going to speed up to get onto the highway after all of these cars are done coming. And this gives me a chance to talk about the other Type S models. You've got the ZDX Type S, the all-electric one, the MDX Type S, the family-friendly SUV, and the TLX Type S, this one's older brother. Now, this one is the only manual one of them all. Obviously, they can't put a manual transmission in an electric car. And, well, that might be a big deciding factor for you. We'll come back to that conversation in just a second. Talking about passing power, it is definitely there. You can go ahead and squeeze through a gap, no problem. Let's go ahead and get back to that conversation. So, this Integra is the only manual Type S in their lineup. Obviously, there's the Civic Type R if you can't quite afford this Integra Type S, but they can't put a manual transmission in an electric car. They don't really want to put that in the MDX because, first of all, it's not even available in the regular MDX, and also the people that are driving it might not be able to drive a manual transmission. I really wish that they would put a manual transmission in the TLX, maybe just for an option, because the TLX was a really fun car to be in and drive, and I really like that car, and they should definitely put an optional manual transmission in there. I understand that some people, and most people nowadays, can't drive a manual transmission, but even if they did put that in there, that might motivate some people to go ahead and learn how to drive a manual transmission because the TLX was such a fun car to drive. The TLX is obviously faster than this Integra Type S. You've got a 0 to 60 time of about 4.5 seconds, so that is a solid 1 second off of the 0 to 60 time in this Integra Type S. This Integra is about as fast as the MDX Type S because the MDX is obviously heavier than the TLX, even though it shares the same powertrain. So I'm going to leave the conversation about these Type S's off of this. If you want the maximum performance, go ahead and get the TLX Type S. If you want the most fun, go ahead and get the Integra Type S because, again, this is the only manual option in Acura's lineup. The most family-friendly one is obviously the MDX. You get 7 seats, you get a good amount of space in the trunk, and you get a lot of exclusive features like massaging seats, air suspension, so those are Acura first features. The Acura ZDX Type S is the only electric car in their lineup, and for some people, they just don't want an electric car, and I completely understand that. It is pretty quick, 4.5 seconds, just like the TLX Type S to 60, and you're going to have a good amount of power, a good amount of torque, and a good amount of features. Also, it's going to bridge the gap between the RDX and the MDX. But in my opinion, it just feels too much like a Chevrolet Blazer. They borrowed way too many features from Chevrolet, and I feel like that Acura should just do it on their own. It's not like Chevrolet is that reliable anyway, and Acura is known to be a reliable brand that lasts a long time, so that just doesn't really make sense to me why they would borrow so many features from Chevrolet if Chevrolet is like the opposite of Acura. At this point, you probably recognize this test drive route. We took the Acura TLX Type S on this about a year ago, maybe a little bit more. We also took the Jeep Grand Cherokee plug-in hybrid on this, so that means that we get to talk about handling, suspension, and stop-and-go traffic, because we will be experiencing that in a little bit. I have to say, sitting at the stoplight right there, the auto start-stop system is not good. I don't think we had it on right there, but we have experience from owning a 2023 Acura MDX Advance. First of all, you don't know when it's going to turn on or not, and if you really want it to turn on, you have to push your foot all the way down on the brake, and that can be pretty tiring for some people. Also, some people might not be comfortable using the brake hold feature, which could be helpful in a situation like this, and the auto start-stop system kills part of the fun in accelerating fast at a stoplight, and it is extremely slow to turn back on. So, I would just say turn it off. It's not really going to do anything for the environment. That's why you would buy a hybrid or electric car. And this is something that they didn't need to add to the Integra Type S. I understand where they're coming from, but they need to do it a little bit better. This also goes for all Honda and Acura products. So I would just say turn off the auto start stop system because you are actually hurting the car more by doing that. The oil has to settle and then it has to unsettle. I don't know what you would call that, but it's just not good for the car and it's not a good idea to have it on all of the time. So back there was our handling test. We took the corner as fast as we could without hitting the car in front of us, and I have to say that the Integra handled it pretty well. It's not going to be the best in the class, but for a sports car, that is definitely adequate. Also, the suspension feels solid, the front end stayed in place, and also, the tires had plenty of grip, and there wasn't too much body roll. Obviously, we couldn't take it any faster than that without hitting the car in front of us, but if you wanted to see how the TLX Type S got to hold up, you can go ahead and watch that video. You do have to scroll down quite a bit on the channel's page to see that. But for an Acura Type S, this is definitely pretty good. Our test drive is coming to a close soon, so I want to say thank you to Fox Acura at Van Arbor. They made this review of the Acura Integra Type S possible, and as for this Integra, it was very pleasurable to review and drive. This is a very fun car, and for $53,000, I would say that this is not a bad option. If you want something that's a little bit more upscale than the Honda Civic Type R, because I know that the Civic is not very upscale, I think this is great without sacrificing anything like the reliability or the resale value. This was very pleasurable to drive, and I've waited a long time to review this car, and I have to say that the wait was worth it. I'm going to stop talking until the end of the video, so thank you guys so much for watching that video. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.